February, as always, the meeting's going to be recorded where it will be capable of repeated viewing online. The council's website will be uploaded with a hyperlink to the council YouTube channel where the video will be hosted and the recording's now begun. Thank you, Robert. Before we begin, can I just welcome our new councillor, Caroline Barton, to the chambers. A warm welcome to you, Councillor Barton, Councillor C. Barton. I also need to remember the initials. So we've got Barton, we've got Maven, we've got. We'll do our best to keep it all right. Just to advise that there's also an additional item regarding the request for the Labour Group for a change in membership of the IJB, which will take before the motion coming at the end. So Julie, can I bring in for the sediment and apologies, please?
Thanks, Provost, and good morning, members. Provost Claire Leach.
Here.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Present, thanks.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
I'm here, thanks, Julie.
Councillor John McFadden.
Good morning.
Thank you. Deputy Provost John McGee.
Yep.
Councillor Caroline Barton.
Yeah.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor David Richardson. No. Councillor James Adams.
Present.
Councillor Jane Sangster.
Here.
Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Douglas Reid.
Yeah.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here, Julie.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Councillor Peter Mabin.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning. Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Jim Todd.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Linda Mabin.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Councillor William Lennox.
Morning, here.
Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
Thank you. I have an apology from Councillor Billy Crawford. Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Neil Watts.
Present, Julie.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Here.
Councillor Jennifer Hogg.
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor James Kyle. Thanks, members.
Thank you, Julie. So just moving on to the Provost remarks. If I could just ask everybody to indulge me because there's a couple of Christmas mentions, which is, don't know about you all, but it's a bit far-flung for where I feel we are now. So Ayrshire Hospice Light Up a Life event on 8th of December. I was honoured to go along to the Old Kirk in Ayr for the Ayrshire-wide Light Up a Life event. It recognises that Christmas can be wonderful, but it can also be a really difficult time, particularly people who are struggling with bereavement and that of the loss of cancer. I thanked all the young people who performed on the day, and it was a really wonderful moment of reflection for so many people when lights were turned off and everybody was invited to light their candle in remembrance of somebody they lost. Trainee celebration at WG13, this was on the 10th of December. This was to congratulate all the trainees who graduated at WG13. They give amazing opportunities to young people who might otherwise never get some of these opportunities. I presented their certificates and it was great to hear all their individual stories of where everybody is today. It's very inspiring. It just shows that it doesn't matter what your background is, you're always capable of some impact. Festival Family Fun Day on the 14th of December. I had a really nice time at the Boswell Centre Family Fun Day. It's lovely to see the school children sing Christmas songs in the array of different stalls held by local businesses and groups. Great that the groups were also supporting the community with a selection of things to choose from to take as donations. I was asked to judge the primary school's Christmas card competition. And while it's really lovely, it's also really difficult. My winner was a wee girl who did an analogy. She drew a wee Christmas dog and it was dashing through the snow, and I thought that was quite cute. Mauchline Burns Club on the 19th of January. It was a pleasure to go along again to the National Burns Memorial in Mauchline to lay a wreath on behalf of the council for the annual wreath laying ceremony in memory of Robert Burns. It was lovely to see such a great turnout, the beautiful tributes that were laid, and afterwards everybody's always welcome back to the pavilion for some entertainment, some Burns works and a wee cup of tea. It's lovely. A brew and a blether. This was on Monday the 20th of January. I was invited along to Brew and a Blether, which is a suicide prevention event held at Kilmarnock train station. There were support services for across the entirety of East Ayrshire, with our stalls offering information and help to people in many different areas. It was great to see lots of different backgrounds coming together as a collective to continue efforts to tackle the many complexities surrounding mental health and the causes of death by suicide. It's also great to see such a visible event on the train station platform and the amount of people who were travelling that were engaging and chatting to stallholders. It's very good. And finally, the Beijing banquet in Kilmarnock, which was on the 4th of February. Coolock Association kindly invited me along to the Chinese New Year event at the Beijing banquet in Kilmarnock. I was delighted to go along again. It's always a fun time. It was to celebrate the Chinese New Year, one of the most important and joyous festivals in the Chinese calendar. And I'm sure you'll all agree with me when I say East Ayrshire are very proud to embrace and celebrate the rich cultural diversities that make up our communities. And we rightly recognise the contribution that everybody brings. This year's Year of the Snake said to be a symbol of transformation, wisdom and adaptability. And I do hope these qualities inspire us all as we move forward together. I get welcomed in with the dragons. How cool is that? Okay. So item 1, declarations of interest, and I'll bring David in, if that's good.
So, Provost, just to confirm through you to all members, we issued the annual advice notice to members, giving best advice prior to the meeting in terms of any required declarations. And just to remind members, that advice also set out the legal prohibitions on any member of any council voting on setting the council tax of the rent if they're in arrears of council tax or rent. Broadly speaking, I'm not aware of any information or situation that would require a declaration at this point in relation to any of those matters. And other than that, taking account of the advice in terms of how members are meant to deal with council appointments, etc., then it's just if any other members wish to make any other declarations of interest or transparency declarations in respect to any items within the budget paper.
Thank you, David. Deputy Leader.
Thanks, Provost. I declare an interest no significant enough to withdraw, and it's in relation to item 5 on the paper, and it's item 26 and expenditure reduction options. I am a registered landlord.
So we're just taking that as a transparency declaration consistent with the position at Cabinet as well. Yesterday there's a proposal to increase the fees for RSLs, and Councillor McMahon's rightly pointing out that would affect him as an RSL, but not in a significant manner. So that's for the record. I don't know if there's any others, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got any declarations? Okay. So moving on to item 2, this is for noting only, and it's East Ayrshire Council Ward 2 Kilmarnock North by-election on the 20th February 25. It's pages 3 to 6 in your papers. For noting only, everybody okay? Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost, and just on behalf of the Labour Group, we'd welcome Councillor Barton, the new Councillor Barton, to her place. And I see there's a trend continuing, and you kind of mentioned it yourself, started by the Councillors Mabin, continued with the Councillors Kyle, and now the Councillors Barton. I can assure members there will not be a Councillor Callaghan Douglas if I have anything to do with it from my household. But just to welcome Caroline to her place. I do have something that I would like to pass to Caroline. I've said to her, and we'll do it after this meeting today as a small gift that had been passed to the late Councillor Mackay that I think it would be nice for Caroline to have. Thank you, members.
Really lovely, thank you. Leader.
Too, I would obviously like to welcome Caroline into the council, making the council in terms of certainly another woman, and I'm quite sure she'll bring out experience and all that she does, something a wee bit different to the council, and I'm sure some of the spokespersons will have to be on their toes that wee bit more. I've not looked at London in particular, but I'm sure she'll keep us all right, and I'm welcome her to East Ayrshire Council. Delighted to have you with us.
Lovely, thank you. Everybody else okay? Cool, thank you. Item 3, previous minutes. This is to submit approval of the correct record minutes of the council meeting on the 12th of December, and I will move as a correct record.
Second that, Provost.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Are there any questions on the council papers? Are they online okay? Perfect, thank you. Item 4 is the Cabinet Committee Minutes, as usual, ask the leader to approve on block, and we can go through questions if we have any. Leader.
Happy to move on block.
Second that, Provost.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Any questions? Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, so moving on to item 5, setting the 25-26 revenue budget. Page 98. Members should refer to the Cabinet report in this matter that was issued to you all. In the order of the debate and time for speeches, in respect to the revenue budget paper, I would ask Council to note that in accordance with standing orders, the mover of a motion or amendment should speak for no more than 10 minutes, with the succeeding speakers entitled to speak for no more than 5 minutes. The original mover shall have the right to speak for no more than 5 minutes on reply. This reports to consider the remit and recommendations for the Cabinet meeting held yesterday, and the leader will introduce his proposals, will ask for a seconder, and afterwards we can take any amendments as needed. Leader.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, members, once again, as the Chief Financial Officer has described, this as being a very difficult budget indeed. And while with the collective help of officers and elected members, we're in a better position than most local authorities in Scotland in terms of diligence and preparedness, we are faced with a series of cuts to services and difficult choices to make for the future of our communities. However, as we share the financial pressures which are having an impact across the country, I am pleased to report that we are still able to present a balanced budget without the use of reserves and still maintain a £40 million early intervention and prevention fund to address local issues, including the alleviation of poverty, improving public health, providing new opportunities for jobs, training and supporting local businesses, and looking to maintain and improve our local environment. This is what our communities ask us to do. So in broad terms, despite a record £289 million investment in local government from the Scottish local government and a significant increased contribution to the UK Treasury, we still have a £8.75 million worth of cuts package in front of us today. And while the £6.6 million from this additional money would have gone a long way to help drastically reduce this gap, we have had to find just under £3 million, or the equivalent of a 4% increase in council tax, to meet the pressure from the UK government's demands for additional employer national insurance contributions. Also, once again, the formula for grant-aided expenditure favours an eastward shift in Scotland to areas experiencing population and economic growth, yet the challenges to public health, economic well-being in areas experiencing population decline like East Ayrshire remain, and this method of allocation of GA needs to be challenged. Rising inflation continues to be a worry, as it hinders our ability to satisfy wage demands, deliver our capital programme, putting pressure on services right across the board. There are difficult cuts in this package, but there are opportunities too. As we continue to tackle health inequalities and poverty, provide much-needed skills, training and job opportunities, particularly for our young people, to help the local labour market and provide support for small local businesses. Recovery plans are now in place, which will be challenging, and we look forward to early reports on how we can best maintain services and the challenging facing our communities. Members will maybe aware, next week is Scottish Apprenticeship Week. The theme is Made for Business. In this context, I'd like to remind members that we have still £40 million intervention and prevention fund to meet these challenges in the future. And so far, 231 young people in East Ayrshire have found places in a graduate intern apprenticeship scheme. This has provided employment for 4 graduate apprentices, 34 graduate interns and 152 modern apprentices. 17 graduate interns have progressed to full-time jobs, and 52 modern apprentices have found jobs in the private sector. This is astonishing, and it's due to the money we invested sometime a few years ago. We want to continue this, as providing skills, training and job opportunities is key to improving the economy and outcomes for the young people. We will therefore move a further £1.5 million to extend jobs and training in each of the next 3 years. Within us, so I think that's great news for our young people. Within our schools, we will provide free school meals for primary pupils and continue half-price school meals for secondary pupils in the next 2 academic years, 25-26 and 26-27. The 3 to 4 year old, for 40-year-olds attending nursery, and based on the success of the introduction of the grant last year, we will extend footwear and clothing grant from £50 to £75. Members, we recently agreed a series of measures to get tough with absentee landlords recently. Land banking and allowing many of our town centre buildings to fall into disrepair by removing exemptions from council tax. We mean to get tough with these people. This detracts from our towns, and we need to get tough with these businesses. However, as well as getting tough with the private sector, we also need to provide support to help businesses get buildings back into use. We therefore intend providing £200,000 to the Deputy Chief Executive to make wider arrangements to support active businesses within our town centres. We will again continue to tackle some of the worst of the roads and pavements and allocate £800,000 for some of the residential areas in our towns. We will also consider any additional road safety measures required after school crossing review, as referred to in item 30. Well, you may think that there has been enough bad news. We want to bring in more bad news. Bad news, that is, for the people who continue to abuse our civic spaces and common areas with litter, dumping waste, vandalism and graffiti, and of course, irresponsible dog owners who do not bother to lift the dog poo off our streets. We are setting aside £770,000 for our officers to come back to members with plans to tackle all community safety and enforcement issues head on. We have all heard the public have had enough and want us to do more. We will also look at the parking service review and items 27 in the cuts packages in this wider enforcement review. This will also include parking charges in terms of Cumnock, Mauchline and Galston and Stewarton. As with parking enforcement officers will be included in the review of community safety and enforcement, so that we can bring all the points raised by members and our communities into the one review. Mauchline toilets. I propose that we use the communities and the economy balances to provide further funding for a year to allow the negotiation to take place for alternatives to be identified. There are a number of positive actions contained within the report that I must commend. The £40 million Early Intervention Prevention Fund, bringing £5.3 million to address poverty-related issues. The £600,000 Speech, Language and Communication will significantly help child development in meeting early milestones. The £1 million resource for anti-poverty and inequality strategy to be brought to members. The additions to jobs and training scheme. The wellbeing support through our partnership with Centre Stage, dealing with mental health issues and social isolation. Contract inflation and price inflation continues to dampen our ambitions for our capital programme, and we agreed at Cabinet yesterday to press ahead with the Doon campus, though there are some significant cost increases. We will also seek to utilise developer contributions or any other funding available to expand capacities in schools, particularly in Alnwick, and we hope to make further progress with developing a school in North West Kilmarnock. I applaud the work done to bring civic centres north and south into use, and also the White Tidal Mill into use. And I recognise the successful partnership between Housing Services and the IGB that brings a joint approach to housing and care needs. I know that we will continue this valued work into the future. I think we were all saddened to see the vandalism that took place in the Children's Play Park in Shortleys, where money had been raised by volunteers to build a park in one of our poorest areas, and I would propose helping the group with £70,000 towards restoration of the park. In Woodroad Park, Cumnock, I would propose allocating £30,000 to fund a feasibility and widen the use of Woodroad Park within with the feasibility study being tasked with identifying the sources of funding needed to progress ambition of local residents. As our Chief Financial Officer said yesterday, these are most financially challenging times, and we are trying to mitigate the cuts where we can and deliver services. There are tough times ahead and difficult decisions to make, and the IJB is likely to bear the brunt of these challenges that exist, and which will grow next year. But I know that we can work together to deliver the best for East Ayrshire. Finally, members, in order to meet our ambitions and future challenges, I would like to move an increase of Band D equivalent 8%, which, although unusually high for us, is far less than a number of authorities, some of whom are in double figures. And I know that this will provide much needed finance to support our much valued services. Provost, I move.
Thank you, Leader. Deputy Leader.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Leader. full endorse and second everything that the leader has set out in the paper. It is ambitious and he's laid out. There is bad news in there. We have listened to the public round about enforcement, and that's all types of enforcement. We've got to look at whether it's antisocial behaviour, whether it's parking enforcement, and whether it's that greener environmental enforcement. Everything will be looked at and around. I'm glad to hear as part of that enforcement that Lincoln parking and enforcement in Cumnock and the smaller villages in East Ayrshire will be included in that wider enforcement package, and obviously glad to hear as part of the process that we'll look at the toilets in Mauchline for a further year and have a look at that contract. So it sits with me well. Yes, there has been challenges and it's been laid out with the Chief Financial Officer. I've been at Community Council's meetings recently and I have laid out the challenges clear and accurately in front of Community Council members. Sometimes it's difficult for them to understand, but I think we all have that duty as elected members to lay that out clearly, the challenges that the faces the council historically, currently this year, and also for the short to medium term that's coming up in front of us. Still not getting the message. I think some of the representatives in their communities, the challenge that we face is still expect council to deliver services that they delivered historically 10 years ago. But that is not an option for us going forward. We need help. We need help with the communities and the volunteers, and I commend the volunteers that step forward to help us on that. So yeah, I back 100% and commend the budget to the rest of the chamber today. The only point I would like to pick up on it, and it was item 23 and Appendix 1, and that was in relation to the savings which have been achieved in relation to Cumnock toilets. As part of that process, the Cabinet delegated agreed to delegated powers for officers. However, in something as contentious as the public toilet, the local members were not involved in any decision making, which was part of that process was last July. It came as a shock to myself and I dare say the other elected members when this came to light to us. So my ask is from officers when they use the delegated powers, when there is something as contentious as that, to involve the local members. Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. So far we've got one proposal and seconder. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you very much, Provost. Members, yet another budget of cuts is before us. Since 2016-17, over £73 million has been cut from this council's budget, an enormous sum of money that could have made significant difference to council services if used to tackle the issues we know that the public want us to focus on. So yet another difficult financial settlement that forces the hands of this council to make difficult decisions, despite the record funding settlement to the Scottish Government from the UK Labour Government, the largest since devolution. The Chief Financial Officer told us of the budget gap this year is £8.75 million, but the future appears even bleaker. As the leader has mentioned, grant-aided expenditure as a method of funding for local services is not our friend in this council or most West of Scotland local authorities. Our population is not growing as fast as elsewhere, but we know our residents are living longer, but with more complex health conditions. GAE doesn't take into account this at all or reflect the issues we have around poverty and inequality. And certainly I would be more than happy to support the leader of the council in any measures that we can take as an authority to press Holyrood in this matter. Of course, I would expect the SNP to have a wee dig at the Labour Government, particularly around national insurance. But it's important that we don't downplay the significant investment in Scotland by the UK Government. If the administration of SNP in general don't support national insurance rises, which taxes would they suggest do rise for the mismanagement left behind by the Tories, or compensate for the Scottish Government's £6 billion of failed and delayed projects across Scotland? I could list them all, Provost, but I've only got 10 minutes for this budget speech. It's against this background that we have to take decisions that we know that will not be without consequences. Turning first to the recommendations in the paper from Cabinet in setting the 25-26 revenue budget, I accept recommendations 1 to 19 with the following exceptions. Appendix 1 to remove proposals 23, which are deletions of the posts at the Tanyard Toilets, Cumnock. Proposal 27, the outsourcing of frontline parking enforcement at this time. And Proposal 28, extending the car parking charges to towns and villages across East Ayrshire. I note that unfortunately, due to the constraints of our settlement this year, we can't do everything that we would like to do, and certainly the leader has also mentioned that. I welcome an extension to our jobs and training scheme, and the 231 apprentices created across the public sector and local businesses is a real positive of the decisions taken in 22-23. And I look to my colleague, our former colleague, John McGee, in that regard. Certainly I know his time when he was Labour Group leader, he absolutely was at the forefront of pushing that forward, so I would welcome that and thank certainly him and the leader of the council and the other group leaders at that time for their work in that regard. In terms of that, I would also want to extend this for a further 3 years with £4.5 million of funding over 3 years. But I want to also include summer placements for our 16 to 18-year-olds who are still in education but about to enter the world of work, with a focus on the high demand areas of employment need, such as home care and renewables, and a proposed allocation of £1.5 million per annum from the Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. Most of us will have heard complaints from residents advising they are unable to get booked into our recycling centres when they want, and as such want to increase the number of appointments available and allocate an extra £80,000 to greener communities to pay for both the staffing and additional costs involved for disposing items such as POPs that will emerge from greater accessibility for residents being able to get into our recycling centres at times that suit them. Roads and footpaths continue to cause concern in our housing estates and villages across East Ayrshire. I propose an extra £500,000 for 25-26 to ARA for upgrades to roads and footpaths, but with proposals being brought to members for consideration so members can ensure their constituents' priorities have been met in this regard. Proposals for community safety and enforcement in the papers brought forward by officers are welcomed. However, we have immediate ask that 2 pilot areas are brought forward with the installation of CCTV cameras in hotspot areas of the new Farnlough courts and the Newton area of Kilmarnock to tackle both antisocial behaviour and the dumping of rubbish that is a blight in these communities, thereby utilising approximately £70,000 to £80,000 of that funding. Of course, the cost of living crisis, members, it isn't over and continues to cause issues for many of our families. We have listened to local retailers in Kilmarnock. We have listened to local residents and local businesses, all of whom want to see some element of free parking in our town centre to support that quick visit to Kev's Cards in the Foregate, that 5-minute run into DM Fruit in King Street to buy some Ayrshire tatties, or to visit Urquhart's opticians for an eye test. And we want to go beyond that, not just those quick visits, so people can spend a bit longer in our town centre. I propose an hour's free parking across Kilmarnock's on-street parking and car parks to support local businesses and encourage people into our town centre, and allocate £586,000 for a year's trial for 25-26, with an evaluation to be undertaken with both local businesses and stakeholders to demonstrate if footfall is increasing within Kilmarnock town centre. As I mentioned before, members, the Labour Group cannot support measures to introduce parking charges to the other towns and villages of East Ayrshire without any impact assessment being carried out on local businesses and retailers. Such proposals were to be accepted in future, we would need to see meaningful engagement with those stakeholders. Whilst we wait for the Scottish Government to do what they have long promised regards primary school pupils receiving a free school meal, Labour Group's proposals for half-price school meals have undoubtedly been popular, and the uptake in our school canteens demonstrate this, with an extra 65,000 additional school meals issued since this measure was introduced, and I warmly welcome it. I want to continue this proposal, but extending free school meals to primary 6 and 7 going forward from August 25 to June 26, with this money coming from the Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. 2 further recommendations and additional measures to consider will release some of the pressure on family budgets. The continuation of the early years clothing grants in years that we brought in 24-25. I propose once again that parents and carers continue to have an entitlement to that £50 clothing grant if they have a child who attends an early years establishment in East Ayrshire, on the basis of the same criteria applied to school footwear and clothing grants, and that cost of £40,000 is proposed to be taken from the Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. Last but by no means least, on the 27th of June 2019, about half members here will perhaps remember this day, my colleague Councillor Billy Crawford brought forward a motion that was unanimously supported by all members on the subject of municipal transport, and with subsequent legislative changes, this council is now in a position to provide local bus services, which sadly to date has not come to fruition. I propose a sum of £30,000 to evaluate the provision of municipal bus services with a focus on routes covering Muirkirk and Sorn, the Doon Valley and North Kilmarnock during peak hours. This will undoubtedly allow us to look at other areas of transportation need across council services and throughout our communities. Noting the tough settlement we face, I believe the proposals contained within the Labour Group budget can go some way to alleviate the continued cost of living pressures facing families across the towns and villages of East Ayrshire. I move the recommendations contained within the Labour Group budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Linda Maben.
Thank you very much, Provost. I'd just like to start by saying that I wholeheartedly support my colleague, Councillor Douglas, and the Labour Group's proposals to be put forward for this budget. Just to pick up on a couple of points Councillor Douglas made, sadly in East Ayrshire we have a poor child poverty rate. Promises continue to come in relation to free school meals. Well, our children can't eat promises. So I'm happy to support the amendments to cover free school meals for primary school children and continue the half price for secondary school. Also, the £50 clothing grant for 3 and 4-year-olds, again, another one originally recommended by our group to continue for the upcoming financial year. One other point I'd like to comment on is the study proposed into a municipal bus service for areas that don't currently have adequate connectivity. One of those areas in particular is within my own ward, so I have been hearing firsthand, as other members will, to the issues this causes. This study, as Councillor Douglas said, has been previously agreed more than 5 years ago, so surely now's the time for it to be dealt with properly. I'd just like to say, and as a reminder, and Councillor Douglas has already commented on it, that it was the largest financial settlement in the history of devolution given to the Scottish Government in the budget last year from the UK Labour Government. The Scottish Government have been given this unique opportunity to deliver much needed support for Scotland's public services. It's for them to decide how to deliver it to our frontline services that people depend on. And I'd finish by seconding the Labour Group proposals for this year's budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Maben. We've got Councillor John McFadden online.
Good morning. I'd like to thank all the officers and their fellow councillors for the time spent putting this budget together. I feel it was very important that we had, so much involvement and had a chance to put our say forward. I'm glad to see that we'll be having a review of the parking rather than simply renting. Parking could be difficult, but we'll see what the review says. In the face of the fact that we national insurance levy placed upon us and the other cuts, I think the budget being proposed is a very workable way forward. I'm also very pleased to know that we've included the Woodrow Park as being, a feasibility study to look for a further development for that, because I feel that that'd be a very valuable thing to have down in the south of the authority in the end. We're not going to put forward any individual, proposals other than what's in the budget, because we've had a fair involvement in the budget that's there. And again, I'd like to thank everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. So we currently have 2 proposals, both with a proposer and seconder. Is there any other proposals for budget? Councillor Miggy. Deputy Provost.
I just like to say that I would like to put in an amendment. It says it was remarkable, very interesting to read the use of the Early Intervention Fund, paragraphs 40 to 49, and the recommendations at Roman numerals 9 and 10. I know it's new the Early Intervention Fund's doing a bit of heavy lifting the day. I know there's a body of evidence that suggests that housing and wellbeing are strongly associated with quality and accessibility of affordable homes directly linked to wellbeing. It's clear that adverse experiences of quality and access can result in poor mental and physical health, whereas increased availability of secure, affordable, warm homes can improve long-term health, well-being and life expectancy. There are opportunities for more partnership working between health and social care in terms of housing services in this area to innovate further in terms of housing options, dementia design, flexible homes for life, technology-enabled care and green efficient homes that can further improve well-being and address poverty.
Exploring the business case for innovation and partnership between housing and health and social care has the potential to secure enduring benefits to the public pound and to our population is certainly worthwhile in consideration of the wider context for housing for people with particular needs, can create opportunities for active ageing, physical activity and intergenerational work that can contribute to inclusion and broader community cohesion. My simple ask today is that we remit to Blair Miller, Head of Housing and Communities, and Eric Sutherland, Head of Locality Health and Care Services, to set out the mechanisms and pathways as to how housing can influence health and wellbeing with a new housing model that looks to support independent living in communities that will make significant savings to the public purse, and where the use of some of the early intervention fund may allow us to set a very high standard for the people we represent. Thank you.
Deputy Provost. Leader.
Can I propose that there's possible there's been some amendments have been made that I can maybe absorb within some of my own recommendations. I'd like to get some advice from the Chief Financial Officer. In just 5 or 10 minutes.
That's fine. We'll have a recess for 15 minutes enough. Yeah. Okay. We'll stop the recording just now then. Thank you.